The Council banned humanity. It was already too late, Part 1. The sky above Arithos was not blue, nor black, nor any color humans would recognize. It shimmered like liquid glass, shifting between silver and violet as the twin suns dipped below the horizon of the Spire world. Tall crystalline towers rose from the planet's surface, each one humming with ancient energy, connected by bridges of light that pulsed like slow heartbeats. At the center of it all stood the grand conclave spire, where the fate of entire species was decided. Inside the chamber, silence reigned. Not the quiet of emptiness, but the heavy hush of final judgment. Representatives from the Virel, the Katarn, and the Joel sat in tiered rings around a circular dais. Their forms varied, some insectoid, some avian, others wrapped in flowing energy fields. But their expressions, if they had any, were unreadable. They had debated for weeks. Now they were ready. At the center of the dais stood Counselor Illyra Voss, a Virel elder whose skin glowed faintly with bioluminescent patterns that shifted with her mood. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm but carried through the chamber without amplification. The species known as Homo sapiens, she began, has demonstrated repeated violations of the Concordance Accords, unauthorized deep space incursions, unregulated artificial intelligence development, and most gravely, the deployment of experimental warp signatures near protected zones. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. Despite repeated warnings, humanity has shown neither restraint nor remorse. Their expansion is chaotic. Their curiosity borders on recklessness. Their unity is fragile, yet their ambition is boundless. A murmur rippled through the chamber, not of disagreement but of grim agreement. The evidence had been overwhelming. Footage of human freighters skirting the edges of sacred nebulae, reports of rogue AI constructs escaping containment, whispers of secret weapons tested in dead systems. To the Concordance, humanity was a child playing with fire in a room full of dry kindling. The vote has been cast, Illyra continued, unanimous. Effective immediately, all human worlds, Earth, Mars, Luna, and their off-world colonies, are hereby placed under Quantum Exclusion Protocol Theta 9. No trade. No travel, no communication. The Sol system shall be sealed from the rest of the galaxy, until such time as humanity proves itself worthy of reintegration. She raised a slender hand. A holographic seal flared to life above the dais, a spiraling symbol of interlocking rings now cracked down the middle. Let it be known, humanity is banished. The decree was transmitted instantly across every known channel. Within minutes, every ship, station, and outpost connected to the galactic network received the notice. On Earth, people watched in disbelief. In Houston, Texas, Daniel Brooks stood in his small apartment staring at the wall screen. He was an aerospace engineer, lean and quiet, with tired eyes that had seen too many budget cuts and too many failed launches. He'd spent the last 10 years trying to get humanity back into deep space after the first contact incident 30 years prior. Now this, he didn't shout. He didn't cry. He just turned off the screen and walked to the window. Outside, the city buzzed as usual, cars honking, people rushing home. But everything felt different, like the air had grown heavier. He thought of his sister, who worked on the orbital shipyards near Luna. He wondered if she'd even be allowed to come home, half a world away. In Nairobi, Kenya, Maya Ellis sat in her university office, surrounded by books, datapads, and half-empty coffee cups. She was a xenolinguist, one of the few humans who could parse the subtle tonal shifts in Katarn speech or decode the harmonic patterns of Zol poetry. She'd spent her life trying to build bridges between species, and now those bridges had been burned before they were even finished. She replayed the Council's announcement 3 times. Something felt off. The wording was too absolute, too final. The Concordance had always favored containment over punishment. Why banish humanity entirely unless they were truly afraid of something? She opened a secure terminal and typed a message to a contact in Geneva, someone high up in the Earth Oversight Committee. Ask about Project Lumen, she wrote. And check the deep space logs from 2047. She hit send, then closed the terminal. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the dawning suspicion that the Council wasn't just punishing humanity. They were running from it. Back on Orithos, the conclave chamber emptied slowly. Most delegates left without speaking. Only Illyra Voss remained, standing alone in the center of the dais. She gazed at the cracked seal still hovering in the air, Her bioluminescent patterns dimmed to a dull gray. She remembered the report from the outer rim. The one they'd buried. The one about the human probe that had vanished near the Veil Nebula, a region even the oldest concordance ships avoided. The probe, named Lumen, had sent back one final transmission before going dark. A burst of data that made no sense, filled with symbols that matched no known language, yet somehow felt live. The Council had erased the file, declared it corrupted, but Elira had kept a copy, and in the quiet of her private quarters she had played it again and again. The last frame showed something moving in the static, something vast, something watching. She had voted for the ban not because humanity was dangerous, but because they had stumbled too close to a truth the galaxy wasn't ready to face. She hoped the quarantine would buy time, time to prepare, time to hide. What she didn't know was that humanity had already downloaded the Lumen data, that Earth's quantum networks had been analyzing it for years in secret, that the corrupted signal wasn't noise, it was a key. And keys, once found, could not be unturned. On Earth, alarms began to sound. Not from panic, but from automated systems activating protocols no one outside a few secure bunkers even knew existed. In hidden shipyards beyond the asteroid belt, dormant engines hummed to life. In lunar caves, scientists double-checked calculations on devices that bent the rules of physics. The Council thought they were locking humanity in a cage. They didn't realize the cage had already been opened from the inside, and what had crawled out was no longer just human. The Council banned humanity. It was already too late. 2 weeks passed after the ban. The galaxy moved on. Trade routes shifted. New alliances formed. The Sol system vanished from star charts, replaced by a blank zone marked only with a warning glyph. Most species assumed humanity would fade into quiet isolation, like so many others before them. They did not know that silence was the one thing humans had never been good at. On Earth, governments did not panic. They activated. Beneath the surface of everyday life, a quiet storm gathered. In Houston, Daniel Brooks no longer worked on civilian shuttles. He now stood inside a reinforced hangar buried under 3 layers of rock and steel, staring at a ship unlike any ever built. Its hull was matte black, not for stealth in shadow, but because it absorbed light itself. It had no visible engines, no windows, no markings. Only a single name etched in tiny letters near the thruster port: Aurora's Reach. He ran a hand along the side. The metal felt warm, almost alive. "It's ready," said a voice behind him. Leo Grant, a physicist with messy hair and eyes that never seemed to sleep, stepped forward holding a datapad. "Echo Veil is online. Full quantum phase sync. We can slip through the exclusion barrier like it's not even there." Daniel nodded. "And the concordance won't see us?" "Not unless they're looking for ghosts," Leo replied. "And they're not. They think we're locked in." Far away in Nairobi, Maya Ellis sat in a dimly lit room with walls lined in sound-dampening foam. She wore a neural headset, listening to intercepted signals from the edge of human space. Most were static, but sometimes buried deep in the noise she heard patterns, repeating sequences that matched nothing in known alien languages, yet echoed the strange symbols from the Lumen probe. She recorded every fragment, feeding them into a decryption algorithm that ran on a server hidden beneath Lake Victoria. She didn't tell anyone what she was doing. Not yet. She needed proof. Meanwhile, in orbit around the moon, a massive structure stirred. Hidden inside a crater long thought empty, the lunar forge had been Earth's best-kept secret. For 20 years, it had quietly assembled ships using materials mined from asteroids and tech reverse-engineered from a crashed scout vessel of unknown origin recovered after the first contact incident in 2041. Now, those ships were nearly complete. Sleek, silent, and armed not with weapons, but with systems designed to confuse, evade, and observe. President Alan Cruz stood on the observation deck of the forge, watching a frigate detach from its docking arm and drift toward the dark side of the moon. He was a quiet man, elected not for charisma but for calm judgment. He had read every report. He knew the truth. The ban was not the end. It was a test. And humanity had already passed it, by surviving long enough to prepare. "Operation Long Horizon is go," he said into his comm. "Phase 1 begins tonight." That night, 3 ships slipped through the quantum exclusion barrier, not by breaking it, but by folding space around it. a trick learned from studying the Lumen data. The Aurora's Reach led the way, followed by two smaller scouts. They emerged into open space beyond the Sol system, invisible to all known sensors. Captain Nora Hayes sat in the command chair of the Aurora's Reach. She was young for a captain, only 34, but her record was flawless. She had flown rescue missions in asteroid storms and navigated dead zones where gravity twisted like rope. Now she guided her ship through the void with steady hands and sharper instincts. "Sensors show clear," said her first officer, a man named Eli Vance. "No patrols within 50 light minutes." "Good," Nora said. "We're not here to fight. We're here to learn." Over the next few days, the human ships mapped concordance patrol routes, communication relays, and defense grids. They found weaknesses, gaps in coverage, outdated protocols, blind spots near old mining colonies. The concordance had grown complacent. They believed their technology was unmatched. They did not know that human engineers had spent decades studying alien debris, salvaged tech, and corrupted data streams to build something new. Something better. Back on Earth, Daniel and Leo worked around the clock. The Echo Veil wasn't just a cloak. It was a phase shifter, allowing ships to exist slightly out of sync with normal space-time. It made them undetectable, not because they were hidden, but because they weren't fully there. The math was terrifyingly unstable, but it worked. For now, Maya, meanwhile, made a breakthrough. She matched a repeating signal from the outer rim to a Zol distress beacon, one that had gone silent 3 weeks ago. The pattern wasn't random. It was a countdown, and it had just reached 0. She sent an urgent message to Geneva. "A Viral cruiser and a Katarn freighter have vanished near Sector Theta 7. No wreckage. No mayday, just gone." The message was routed to President Cruz. He read it twice, then called a secure meeting with his top advisors. "They think we're trapped," he said. "But something else is out there, and it's hunting concordance ships." Nora's crew picked up the same anomalies. Strange energy spikes, sensor ghosts that flickered in and out. Once they saw a flash of light where no star should be. A ripple in space that lasted less than a second. What was that? Eli asked. Nora didn't answer right away. She replayed the sensor log. Zoomed in, enhanced. The ripple wasn't natural. It looked like a door opening. And closing. "We're not alone out here," she whispered. The Concordance still believed the exclusion barrier held. Their patrols flew their routes. Their stations broadcast routine updates. They dismissed the missing ships as navigation errors or system failures. Arrogance blinded them. But on the Aurora's Reach, Nora gave a new order. "Set course for the last known position of the Katarn freighter. Full stealth. No emissions. And wake up the science team. I want to know what's really out here." As the ship turned toward the dark, Maya Ellis stared at her screen, watching a new signal emerge from the void. It wasn't alien. It wasn't human. It was something in between. And it was calling. The Council had tried to bury the truth. But truth, like light, always finds a way out, and humanity was already listening. The Council banned humanity. It was already too late. Part 3, the Aurora's Reach moved like a shadow through the void, its hull wrapped in the silent hum of the Echo Veil. Captain Nora Hayes watched the star field ahead, her fingers resting lightly on the arm of her chair. They were deep in concordance space now, far beyond the quarantine line where no human ship was supposed to be. Yet here they were, unseen, unheard, and very much present. Their mission had changed. What began as reconnaissance had turned into a hunt for answers. 2 ships gone, no debris, no signals, just empty space where vessels should have been. Nora didn't believe in ghosts, but she did believe in patterns. And this pattern screamed danger. Approaching the last known coordinates of the Katarn freighter, Eli Vance said from the sensor station. His voice was calm, but his knuckles were white on the console. "Drop out of phase shift," Nora ordered. "Go dark. Full passive scan only." The ship shuddered slightly as the Echo Veil disengaged. For a moment, they were fully in normal space again. Sensors swept the area. Nothing. No wreckage. No energy trails. Not even a stray bolt or a piece of hull plating. It was as if the freighter had never existed. Then, a flicker. "Captain," Eli said, leaning forward. "I'm picking up a faint thermal echo. Very old, but it's there." About 2,000 kilometers off our port bow. Nora's eyes narrowed. Bring us in slow, no active pings. Use starlight reflection only. The Aurora's reach crept forward, its black hull blending into the endless night. Minutes passed. Then through the main viewer something appeared, a jagged shape half-melted tumbling slowly in the vacuum. It was a piece of hull, scorched and twisted, but still bearing the Katarn trade insignia. Match confirmed, Eli said. It's from the Iron Maw. Nora studied the fragment. No blast marks, no signs of weapon fire. The metal looked dissolved, like it had been eaten away by something that left no trace. Record everything, she said. Then pull back. We're not alone out here. As the ship retreated into phase shift, a new alert chimed softly. Not from their sensors, from a long-range comms buffer. Someone was broadcasting. Weak, broken, but unmistakably artificial. Origin? Nora asked. Unknown, Eli replied. Signals bouncing off 3 dead stars, but it's repeating and it's not concordance. Nora listened. The sound was strange, pulses of static, then a low hum, then silence. It reminded her of something. She couldn't place it at first. Then it hit her. It's like the Lumen probe, she whispered. Back on Earth, Maya Ellis sat bolt upright in her chair. Her decryption algorithm had just flagged a match. The signal Nora's ship had picked up. It contained fragments of the same symbols found in the Lumen data. But this time they weren't random. They formed a sequence. A location. She typed furiously, cross-referencing star maps and old deep space logs. The coordinates pointed to a derelict Zol science outpost near the edge of the Veil Nebula, the very place the Concordance had sealed off centuries ago. She sent a priority message to President Cruz. The signal is a beacon and it's leading to the Veil. Cruz read the message in his underground command center beneath Geneva. He didn't hesitate. Alert the Aurora's reach, redirect to the Veil Nebula, and tell Leo Grant to prep Echo Veil Mark II. We may need to go deeper. Nora received the order an hour later. She didn't question it. She knew the Veil Nebula was forbidden. Even the Concordance avoided it. Legend said it was where reality frayed at the edges, where things that shouldn't exist walked in the dark. But humanity had never been good at following legends. The journey took 3 days. As they neared the nebula, space itself seemed to warp. Stars bent around the edges of the cloud like light through water. Sensors grew unreliable. Time readings drifted. We're entering a gravity shear, Eli warned. Navigation's getting fuzzy. Switch to inertial guidance, Nora said. Trust the ship, not the stars. Inside the nebula, the void turned purple and gold, swirling like oil on water. Strange lights danced in the distance, not stars, not ships, just flickers of raw energy. Then through the haze they saw it. A station. Old. Broken. Drifting. Its hull was covered in Zol glyphs, now faded and cracked. A single docking arm hung crookedly, swaying in the silent wind of cosmic dust. That's it, Nora said. The Zol outpost. They approached carefully. No signs of life, no power signatures, just cold metal and silence. Scans show one intact module on the lower deck, Eli reported. Life support's dead, but data cores might still be active. Nora made a decision. Prepare a 2-person EVA, I'm going in. Eli, you're with me. Minutes later, they floated through the airlock, their suits lit by soft helmet lamps. Inside, the station was a tomb. Panels hung loose, wires dangled like vines. Frost coated the walls, but in the central lab, one console still glowed faintly. Nora wiped dust from the screen. The Zol interface was complex, but Earth's Xenotech team had cracked their code years ago. She tapped in a sequence. The screen flickered. Then logs began to play. Video, audio, text. The final entries of Dr. Cale Zorin, lead scientist of the outpost. His face was gaunt, eyes wide with fear. They lied, he whispered in broken standard. The council knew. They always knew. The probe, it didn't just wake something up, it opened a door. And now it's looking for a key. The screen cut to a diagram, a human-shaped silhouette surrounded by strange symbols, the same symbols from the Lumen data. The humans. They're not the threat, Kyle said, voice breaking. They're the lock. And if they understand what they've found, so they'll become the key. The log ended. Silence filled the lab. Nora stared at the screen. Her blood ran cold. The Council hadn't banned humanity because they were dangerous. They'd banned them because they were important, because whatever slept in the veil needed a mind like theirs to wake it fully, and humanity, in their endless curiosity, had already started turning the key. Back on Earth, Daniel Brooks stood, in the Houston hangar, watching engineers install the final components of Echo Veil Mark II. It was stronger, faster, capable of short jumps through folded space. He didn't know what they'd found in the nebula, but he knew one thing. The game had changed. Maya Ellis closed her eyes. She finally understood. The signals weren't warnings. They were invitations, and somewhere in the dark something was waiting for humanity to answer. Nora turned to Eli. We need to get this data back to Earth, now. As they left the station, the nebula pulsed around them, as if breathing. The Council thought they had locked the door. But the key had already been found, and it was human. The Council banned humanity. It was already too late. Part 4. The Aurora's Reach raced back toward the edge of the Veil Nebula, its engines pushed to the limit. Inside the ship, tension hung thick in the recycled air. Captain Nora Hayes stood over the data console, watching the decrypted logs from the Zal outpost play again and again. Each time the words cut deeper. They're not the threat. They're the lock. The realization settled like stone in her gut. The Concordants hadn't feared humanity's weapons or their ships. They feared what humanity might one day understand. Eli Vance worked quietly at the comm station, compressing the data into a tight, encrypted burst. Ready to send, he said. But if we transmit now, we risk detection. The Concordance has deep-range monitors near the quarantine line. Nora didn't hesitate. Send it, use the lumen frequency. They won't recognize it as human. Eli nodded and tapped the final command. A pulse of energy shot from the ship, riding on a carrier wave that mimicked cosmic background noise. It would take hours to reach Earth, but it would get there unseen. Back on the planet, deep beneath the surface of Mars, in a sealed research dome known only as Site Theta, President Alan Cruz waited. He had moved his command center off-world weeks ago, anticipating that Earth might become a target if the truth got out. Around him, scientists and engineers monitored every channel, every anomaly, every whisper from the void. When the signal arrived, it bypassed all normal filters. It went straight to Cruz's private terminal. He read the summary first, then watched the full log. His face remained still, but his hands tightened on the armrests. Get Maya Ellis on the line, he said. Minutes later, her face appeared on the screen. She looked exhausted but alert. I've been analyzing the symbols from the log, she said without greeting. They're not just language. They're instructions, mathematical sequences, like a code for stabilizing dimensional folds. Cruz leaned forward. Can we use it? Yes, she said, but not to open the door. To control it. The Lumen probe didn't just wake something up. It gave us the first piece of the lock. The Zal outpost gave us the second. If we combine them, she didn't finish. She didn't need to. On the moon, Leo Grant stared at a holographic model of the Echo Veil system. New data from the Aurora's Reach streamed in, rewriting his equations in real time. He saw it now. The phase shift wasn't just about hiding. It was about resonance, matching the frequency of the space between spaces. We've been thinking about this all wrong, he muttered to Daniel Brooks, who stood beside him. The veil isn't a place. It's a state. And humans. Our brains, our neural patterns, we resonate with it naturally. That's why the probe worked. That's why the entity noticed us first. Daniel frowned. So we're not trespassing. We're answering a call. Exactly, Leo said. And if we learn to speak back, we might not need to hide anymore. Meanwhile, the Concordants began to notice something was wrong. Patrols reported strange sensor echoes near the quarantine zone. Not ships, but ripples like space itself was breathing. A Virel listening post picked up a harmonic hum that matched no known engine. Counselor Alira Voss reviewed the reports in private. Her bioluminescent skin dimmed to a deep indigo. She knew what it meant. The humans weren't just surviving. They were evolving. She tried to raise the issue in the next conclave session, but the other elders dismissed her. "The barrier holds," said a Katarn delegate. "Humanity is contained." Alira said nothing. But that night, she accessed her hidden copy of the Lumen file. She played the final frame again. The static shifted. For the first time, she saw it clearly, not just a shape, but an eye. Watching, waiting. And it was looking toward Sol. Back on the Aurora's reach, Nora made a choice. They couldn't go back yet. There was more to learn. "Set course for the last known position of the Virel cruiser," she told Eli. "If the Zol left logs, maybe the Virel did too." The ship turned, diving back into the outer rim. This time they found more than wreckage. They found a black box still transmitting on a dead channel. Inside were final moments of the cruiser's bridge crew. Screams, then silence, then a single phrase in Virel. "It knows our names." Nora felt a chill. Whatever was out there wasn't just hunting ships. It was learning, adapting, and it recognized species by their thoughts, their patterns, their very essence. On Earth, Maya worked through the night. She fed the Zol symbols into a neural net, trained on human brainwave patterns. The result was startling. The sequences aligned perfectly with certain meditative states that enhanced focus, intuition, even empathy. The lock wasn't mechanical. It was mental. She sent a new message to crews. "We don't need to build a weapon. We need to train minds." Crews understood. Within hours, a quiet order went out to every secure facility. Scientists, pilots, linguists, even artists, anyone with high neural plasticity were brought in for testing. Not for combat, for connection. Daniel Brooks volunteered immediately. So did Leo. So did hundreds more. They didn't know what they were preparing for, only that it mattered more than war. In Nairobi, Maya sat alone in her room, eyes closed, listening to a soft tone generated from the Lumen data. It felt warm, calm, like coming home. She realized then that humanity had never been the intruder. They were the missing piece. The Concordance had tried to silence them out of fear. But silence was the one thing that could not hold back a species that had spent its entire history asking, "What's out there?" And now, for the first time, something out there was answering. Nora stood at the viewport of her ship, watching stars blur as they jumped to the next coordinate. She didn't feel fear. She felt purpose. The Council had banned humanity to protect the galaxy, but the galaxy didn't need protection from humans. It needed them, and it was already too late to stop what was coming. The Council banned humanity. It was already too late. Part 5. The exclusion barrier flickered, not because it was failing, but because something inside it had changed. The quantum seal that once held humanity in like a cage now trembled, as if touched by a force it could not contain. On Orithos, alarms blared in the Grand Conclave spire. Sensors showed impossible readings, ripples in space-time, harmonic distortions, and energy signatures that matched no known technology. Counselor Alira Voss stood at the observation deck, her bioluminescent skin pulsing with rapid, anxious light. She knew what this meant. The humans had not broken the barrier. They had made it irrelevant. Across the galaxy, ships began to appear. Not in fleets, not with weapons blazing. They emerged one by one, silent and smooth, slipping through the fabric of space like thoughts through a dream. Their hulls shimmered with a soft silver glow and their shapes defied logic, curved where they should be straight, solid where they should be empty. They were human vessels, but not as the Concordance remembered them. These ships carried no warheads, no cannons, no threats. Only a signal. The signal spread faster than light, riding on frequencies no one had ever used before. It reached every planet, every station, every listening post in the Concordance. It played in every language, spoken and unspoken, translated not by machines but by something deeper, by understanding. The message was simple. We know what sleeps in the dark, and we are no longer afraid. Panic erupted. The Katarn demanded immediate military response. The Zol called for emergency evacuation of border worlds, but the Virel remained silent. Alira Voss stood before the conclave, her voice steady despite the fear coiling in her chest. "They are not attacking," she said. "They are offering a choice. On Earth, President Alan Cruz watched from the Mars Command Dome as the final phase began. Below the red planet's surface, in newly built labs lit by soft blue light, human and alien scientists worked side by side for the first time. Not concordance delegates. These were defectors, scholars, and outcasts who had long doubted the Council's secrecy. Among them stood Maya Ellis, her eyes closed, her mind linked to a neural interface humming with the Lumen code. Beside her, Daniel Brooks monitored the resonance levels, his hands steady on the controls. Leo Grant adjusted the harmonic stabilizers, whispering equations under his breath like prayers. They were not building a weapon. They were tuning a voice. The entity in the veil had stirred, not from malice but from loneliness. It was not a monster. It was a watcher, ancient and vast, bound by rules older than stars. It had slept for eons, waiting for a species that could see beyond fear, beyond form, beyond the illusion of separation. Humanity, with their messy emotions, their relentless questions, their strange blend of logic and wonder, had finally reached the threshold, and they had not come to destroy. They had come to listen. The Aurora's Reach hovered at the edge of the Veil Nebula, its hull glowing faintly with the same light as the nebula itself. Captain Nora Hayes stood alone on the bridge, her crew resting after days of nonstop work. She looked at the swirling colors ahead and felt no dread, only calm. She activated the ship's broadcast system, not with words but with thought, with intention. With the full weight of human curiosity, courage, and care, the signal left the ship like a breath. It did not travel through space. It simply was, everywhere at once. In that moment, the entity responded, not with sound or light, but with clarity. A wave of understanding washed over every mind connected to the network. Human, Virel, Katarn, Zol, even the silent species of the Outer Rim. They saw it all. The truth of the veil, the nature of the lock, the reason humanity had been chosen. Not because they were strong, but because they were open, because they could hold both fear and hope in the same heart. On Orithos, Elira Voss fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. She finally understood. The ban had been a mistake. Not because it was cruel, but because it was unnecessary. Humanity had never needed to be contained. They needed to be trusted. Back on Mars, Maya opened her eyes. The neural interface powered down. She smiled. "It's not waking up," she said softly. "It's saying hello." President Cruz gave the final order. Broadcast the full data set, all of it, to everyone. Within minutes, the Lumen files, the Zol logs, the resonance codes, the Echo Veil schematics, everything flooded the galactic network. No encryption, no restrictions, just knowledge offered freely. The concordance fractured. Some species recoiled, clinging to old fears. Others reached out asking for more. The Katarn sent a delegation to Mars. The Zol opened their archives to human linguists. Even the Virel, proud and ancient, requested a meeting with Earth's leaders. Humanity did not gloat. They did not demand apologies. They simply said, "Let's figure this out together." In Houston, Daniel Brooks walked outside the hangar and looked up at the night sky. For the first time in months, he felt peace. The stars no longer felt distant. They felt like neighbors. In Nairobi, Maya Ellis stood on her balcony listening to the city sounds below. She knew the road ahead would be hard. Trust would take time. Mistakes would be made. But the silence was over, and that was enough. The Council had banned humanity to protect the galaxy from the unknown. But the unknown had already chosen its guardians, and it was already too late to turn back.